Imagine an isolated island,
Okay.
just, rock, grass, and a cold ocean. Now, start the clock. 90 years pass.
Right, so basically a single human lifetime.
Exactly. And over those 9 decades, the population just explodes. I mean, it literally doubles in size.
Wow.
But the island doesn't grow a single inch. The soil doesn't magically become, twice as fertile. So logically, what comes next?
Well, I mean, you know the answer to that. We've seen it in history 1,000 times.
Right. Starvation, chaos, total societal collapse.
Exactly.
But that is not what happened on this specific island. Instead, the average person actually got incredibly wealthy.
How? Yeah, that is the exact mystery we are decoding today. We are taking a deep dive into 19th century Britain.
And it is a fascinating one.
It really is, because for decades, mainstream historians have basically sold you this comfortable, very neat narrative. But it's a narrative built on a massive lie.
They told you Britain's Industrial Revolution was this purely homegrown miracle, right? They claimed global trade was just like a nice bonus, a shiny byproduct of their brilliant inventions.
The story always goes, they invented the steam engine, they got rich off their own sweat, and the rest of the world was just a convenience.
Yeah, a convenient place to sell extra stuff. But today, we're going to completely shatter that illusion.
We really are. We're pulling our intelligence today from a groundbreaking, monumental study. 3 world-class economic historians basically did the impossible.
Yeah, Gregory Clark, Kevin O'Rourke, and Alan Taylor.
Exactly. They are the decoders for this deep dive. Our mission today is to completely rewrite how you understand the rise of the modern world using their data.
And they didn't just, read old diaries or guess. I mean, explain exactly what these researchers built, because this is the part that completely blew my mind.
Oh, it's incredible. They built this massive data-driven simulation of the entire 18th and 19th century global economy.
Like a digital clone of the world?
Exactly like a digital clone. There's been years feeding it millions of real historical data points. Port registries, shipping logs, tax ledgers, merchant records from 3 different continents.
Wow. So they mapped the actual real trade routes and the real resource limits?
Yes. They basically recreated the global economy inside a machine. And what they found inside that machine is absolutely ruthless.
It uncovers the brutal logic of how empires actually survive. Because if Britain hadn't traded, the Industrial Revolution wouldn't have just stalled.
No, it would have caused a catastrophic humanitarian disaster.
So, buckle up. Because you are going to feel a constant sense of, wait, everything I thought I knew about this was completely wrong.
Yeah, let's start by setting up that mainstream illusion.
Yeah.
The lie we've all been taught, and economists used to call this idea, trade was the child of industry.
Right, the classic textbook story. We are taught that Britain became this titan of industry completely all alone.
Exactly. They built the mechanical looms, they mined the coal, they dominated manufacturing.
And then, just because they had extra cash lying around, they decided to trade for fun. Like someone buying luxury watches with their year-end bonus.
That's exactly how it was treated. And standard economic formulas backed this up for half a century.
Wait, really? The formulas supported that?
Oh, absolutely. Experts would run these basic models and confidently claim that even in the mid-1800s, closing the borders would only cost Britain a tiny fraction of its wealth, like maybe 6%.
6%? That's nothing.
Right. They treated global trade as a mere accessory. Just a side note.
But hold on, this is where the logic completely falls apart for me.
Go ahead.
If trade was just a side gig, just a luxury, why did Britain act the way it did? Why did they spend over 100 years fighting bloody, incredibly expensive naval wars?
Exactly.
I mean, you look at the Napoleonic blockades, the clashes with the Spanish Armada, the wars with the Dutch. They literally bled their treasury dry to control global trade routes.
Right.
You do not bankrupt your entire nation for a side hustle.
And that is the ultimate paradox. The blood and treasure spent simply do not match the old academic theories. So our 3 decoders decided to really test it.
By using their digital clone?
Yes. They hit the shutdown button on their global simulation. They isolated Britain completely. No imports, no exports. A total hermetic seal.
Okay.
And they started by running this shutdown scenario in the 1760s, the absolute eve of the Industrial Revolution.
Okay, so 1760s, Britain goes dark. What happens? Riots in the streets. Total economic collapse.
Barely a scratch.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Closing the borders in 1760 would have only cost the British economy a pathetic 3 to 4% of its overall well-being.
That's insane.
The simulation proved the old mainstream historians were actually right. but only about the 1760s. At that specific moment in time, Britain really didn't need the world.
Let me just digest this for a second. We always picture 18th century Britain as this aggressive, sprawling global empire.
Right, the sun never sets, all that.
Exactly. But you're saying if you cut them off from the planet in 1760, they basically just shrug it off.
Pretty much. Because if you look at the reality of the 1760s economy, it was heavily agrarian. Sheep, wheat, local crafts.
So they were mostly just feeding themselves.
Yeah. They paid for their imported food and little luxuries mostly by selling raw wool. Shutting off the world just meant they had to drink less tea and make a few more of their own shirts. It was a minor inconvenience, not a fatal blow.
Which brings us to a massive revelation. Think about Britain's legendary textile industry.
Oh, this is the best part.
We are taught it was the beating heart of their empire, right? The mighty world-conquering looms of Lancashire.
Right.
But the simulation from the 1760s reveals something completely humiliating.
It was a pathetic, weak sector. The British cotton industry was not dominating the world in 1760. They were actually a net importer of cotton goods.
I need to pause on that.
Yeah.
The British cotton industry, the industry that basically defines the Industrial Revolution in our history books, was losing to foreign competitors on its own soil.
Heavily. They were buying vastly more finished shirts and beautifully dyed fabrics from India than they were selling.
From India?
Yes. Indian calicos were far superior in quality and much cheaper to produce. Britain was the total underdog. Their global footprint in manufacturing was basically zero.
Okay, so 1760s, Britain could survive alone because they simply weren't that industrialized yet.
Correct.
But hold on tight, because we are going to fast forward exactly 90 years, one single human lifetime. We arrive in the 1850s.
And the landscape is completely transformed. The skies over Manchester are black with coal soot. The rivers are dyed with factory runoff.
With the peak industrial image.
Exactly. So the researchers ran the exact same shutdown simulation,
Yeah.
the exact same digital parameters. But this time, they fed the machine the data from the 1850s.
Okay, and drop the numbers. Because in 1760, cutting off the world meant a tiny 3% loss. What about in 1850?
A staggering instant 27.5% drop in national welfare.
Over a quarter of their entire standard of living obliterated overnight. Just think about what a 27.5% drop means for a normal person. I mean, a quarter of your life gone. Your purchasing power, your food security, your heat, vanish.
That's completely apocalyptic.
So how did an industry that was a global weakling in 1760 transform into a super exporting monster in just 90 years? And more importantly, why did losing trade suddenly mean stepping off a cliff into the apocalypse?
Because Britain didn't just grow over those 90 years, it mutated.
Mutated.
Yeah. It morphed into a completely different species of economy, a creature that could literally no longer feed its own body.
Okay, let's bring in the real villain of this story, because it isn't a foreign army. It's not a rival empire.
No, it's human biology.
Population growth.
Exactly. During this exact 90-year window, the British population was exploding. It was growing at an average of 1.2% every single year.
Now, that sounds small to a modern year, like 1.2%, who cares?
Yeah.
But compound interest is an absolute beast. Over 90 years, the population effectively doubled. Imagine playing a survival video game. Your population keeps doubling, but the size of your map is rigidly locked. You can't farm outside your borders. You can't discover new land.
And this is the ultimate Malthusian trap.
Explain the Malthusian trap for us.
Sure. So the economist Thomas Malthus famously predicted that human population would always, eventually, outgrow the available food supply. Because land is fixed, it can only produce so many calories.
Right.
When the mouths outnumber the calories, the result is inevitably famine, disease, and death. It forcibly resets the population back down to a sustainable level.
It's an invisible cage. You are trapped on a tiny rock in the Atlantic with twice as many hungry mouths.
Exactly. But let me push back here, because what about the British agricultural revolution?
Yeah.
We are constantly taught about crop rotation. Jethro Tull's seed drill, the enclosure acts,
Oh, they definitely tried.
weren't they maximizing their own land, constantly innovating their farming techniques?
They were. They pushed their soil to its absolute biological limits, but you just can't out-engineer basic geography.
Even with the seed drill, a fixed island can only produce so much wheat. The innovation simply could not outpace the sheer volume of new human beings being born every single day.
So what does the 1850s simulation say happens if you trap that exploding population without global trade?
The data is absolutely ruthless. If Britain had to feed and clothe that doubled population using only its own fixed land, it would have been a bloodbath.
A bloodbath.
A complete bloodbath. The sheer number of desperate workers competing for limited food and resources would have driven actual wages down by a terrifying 30%.
30%. Let's explain the mechanics of that, because it's not just your boss walking in and paying you less, right?
Right.
If borders close, food prices skyrocket because grain is scarce. Workers have to spend almost their entire paycheck just on basic bread.
Exactly. And this means they stop buying manufactured goods, like clothes or furniture.
Right. And then the factories lose their domestic customers, so they start laying off workers.
And now you have massive crowds of unemployed workers fiercely competing for overpriced bread. That is the 30% drop. It would have been an era of mass poverty, widespread starvation, a complete humanitarian nightmare.
But look at the actual history books. That nightmare didn't happen.
No, it didn't.
Real wages in Britain did not drop 30% during this era. They miraculously rose by 45%.
Which is mind-boggling when you think about it.
We had twice the people, fixed land, but everyone got drastically richer. How did they break the fundamental laws of economic gravity?
By heavily warping their own technology tree.
Okay, think of like a civilization building game. You earn tech points. Normally, a balanced player distributes them evenly, right? A little in farming, a little in military, a little in industry. You want balanced growth.
Right, but the simulation breaks down the actual efficiency numbers for 19th century Britain. We're talking about pure technological advancement. How much more output you get from the exact same input.
And the numbers are completely unhinged. The cotton manufacturing efficiency was skyrocketing. It was going up by 2.4% every single year.
That is compound, explosive, exponential growth.
But agriculture, farming efficiency was only growing at a measly 0.3%.
Right.
It's like playing that video game and dumping 100% of your hard-earned skill points into textile weaving and absolutely 0 points into growing food. It is a totally unbalanced, twisted tech tree.
And that twisted tech tree forces you into a hyper-aggressive survival strategy.
How so?
Because you are so incredibly efficient at making shirts and so incredibly constrained at growing wheat relative to your population size, your domestic economy becomes dangerously warped.
You have mountains of cheap, perfectly woven shirts, and a single loaf of bread costs a fortune.
Exactly. But you can't eat shirts.
No, you cannot eat shirts.
This is where we must introduce the concept of ghost acres. It's a term coined by historian Kenneth Pomerantz, and it perfectly explains the simulation's findings.
Ghost acres. I love that term.
It's so accurate. Britain physically could not grow enough food or cotton on their own soil. It was geographically impossible.
So they had to cheat the map. They used trade to acquire invisible land overseas.
Precisely. We need to stop viewing 19th century trade as, like, an exchange of luxury goods.
Yeah.
It wasn't about bringing in exotic spices for rich people's dinners.
Right.
Trade was the literal, physical expansion of their agricultural borders. When Britain imported raw cotton and grain, they were effectively annexing millions of acres of farmland in the Americas, in India, in Egypt.
Invisible territory. Without firing a shot, they attached massive invisible continents to their little island.
And we really have to acknowledge the grim reality of those ghost acres.
Absolutely.
The simulation calculates the raw economic input, but historically those acres were worked by enslaved people in the American South and colonial subjects in India. Britain outsourced its land constraints to the rest of the globe.
Cut off that invisible territory, and the British industrial machine suffocates instantly. They were entirely dependent on these ghost acres to survive their twisted tech tree.
Let's look at what happens to specific industries in the 1850s isolation simulation. Because if you cut off the trade, the core of the empire, the mighty cotton textile industry, suffers a catastrophic 59% collapse.
Almost 60% of their golden industry wiped out in a flash.
Poof, gone.
The mighty factories empty, the incredible machines just rusting in the dark. So naturally, everyone assumes they know exactly what the fatal vulnerability was. Right?
Oh yeah, the great American myth.
Exactly. If you ask anyone about this era, they immediately point to the American South. The narrative is that Britain's survival was completely tied to American slave-driven cotton plantations.
Right.
If America cut off the raw cotton, Britain would die.
Right. I mean, that was the entire geopolitical strategy of the Confederacy during the American Civil War.
Yes.
They called it King Cotton. They believed Britain would have to intervene to save them or risk total economic collapse.
And that strategy was based on a massive, fatal miscalculation. The simulation proves the Confederacy completely wrong.
Wait, really? Yes. The researchers decided to isolate just North America in their digital clone. They simulated cutting off only the United States and the Caribbean from Britain, leaving the rest of the world open.
Okay, this is a major reality check. What happens to the mighty British Empire when America goes dark?
A tiny 1.6 to 3.6% loss in national welfare for Britain.
Wait, I have to stop you.
Yeah?
Losing the mighty American cotton supply, the vast majority of their raw material only causes a 3% dent. How is that mathematically possible? The factory should have starved.
Because of the insane elasticity of the global supply chain, raw materials are surprisingly replaceable.
The elasticity miracle. I need you to explain this mechanically. How does the world actually react when the biggest cotton farm on the planet suddenly shuts down?
Well, we have to look at how global markets instantly reroute. When America goes dark in the simulation, the supply of cotton drops, right? Which causes the global price to tick up.
Yeah.
That price increase is a massive signal flare to every farmer on Earth. Instantly, countries like India, Brazil, and Egypt ramp up production to fill the void.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a farmer in Egypt realizes he can make twice as much money planting cotton instead of wheat. So he switches.
It's a self-healing network. Now, historically, there was a short-term shock, right?
Definitely.
The Lancashire cotton famine did cause immense suffering for a few years during the U.S. Civil War because, plants take time to grow.
Exactly.
But the simulation shows that over a medium-term equilibrium, global markets completely adapt. Raw materials are a weak weapon. You can always find another field to grow a plant.
Exactly. So if raw materials are not the fatal vulnerability, what is? Why does cutting off the rest of the world cause absolute devastation?
This is the darkest realization of the whole study. The world was not Britain's farm.
No, it was their dumping ground.
Markets over materials. Explain what that means for a 19th century factory.
The researchers reveal a terrifying statistic. By the 1850s, 60% of all British cotton goods were exported.
60%.
Yes.
They were producing wildly, absurdly more than their own population could ever possibly wear. They didn't just need the world to sell them raw cotton. They desperately, fundamentally needed the world to buy their finished shirts.
Losing buyers is infinitely more deadly than losing suppliers.
Wow.
Think about it. If you lose a supplier, you find another farm. If you lose your buyers, your entire industrial ecosystem collapses. The factories stop. The workers are fired. The capital evaporates. The twisted tech tree backfires spectacularly.
Let's bring this down to the street level, the internal conflict. Class warfare. Let's say the government did decide to close the borders in 1850. Who actually wins and loses inside Britain?
The simulation is incredibly granular here. It runs the numbers on different social classes and reveals that a closed-off Britain would be a landlord's absolute paradise.
Walk me through the mechanics of that. Why do the landlords win?
Well, think about the physical constraints we discussed. In a closed-off Britain, food becomes incredibly scarce. The population is huge, the land is fixed, and no cheap grain is coming in on ships from abroad.
Right.
So what happens to the price of domestic food? It skyrockets to the moon.
And who owns the land that grows that astronomically expensive food?
The aristocratic landlords.
This actually mirrors real history perfectly. The Corn Laws. After the Napoleonic Wars, the British landlords essentially did try to ban cheap foreign grain to keep their own profits artificially high.
Exactly. The Corn Laws were a real-world preview of this simulation. The data shows that in a fully isolated Britain, the actual rental income of the wealthy landlords would have exploded by nearly 40%.
40%?
Yeah, they become super winners. The lords and barons sitting on vast country estates get fabulously wealthy simply because everyone else is starving.
But what about the people actually bleeding and sweating in the factories? The workers who actually built the industrial empire?
It's the workers' nightmare. Their wages get absolutely crushed by 33.5%.
Oh my God.
And the capitalists, the factory owners who invested in the machines, they see their profits completely wiped out because no one can afford to buy their goods.
This is socially explosive. You have a society where the workers are literally starving in the streets, the factory owners are bankrupt and shutting down the mills, and a tiny handful of aristocrats with titles and land are hoarding all the wealth.
Yeah.
That is not just an economic depression. That is a recipe for a guillotine.
It really is. It forces us to reevaluate 19th century political history. Free trade wasn't just an elegant economic theory debated by intellectuals in smoking rooms. It wasn't a luxury.
It was the only valve preventing a violent, bloody class revolution. If
Exactly.
they had closed the borders, the poor would have literally eaten the rich. They had to keep the ships moving. They repealed the corn laws because they realized the twisted tech tree demanded it.
And it wasn't just about shirts and fabrics. The unbalanced technology tree infected absolutely everything in the British economy.
Right. Let's talk about the heavy metal. Iron and coal. The raw muscle of the empire. Did they escape this trap?
Not at all.
Yeah.
The chain reaction is terrifying to watch in the simulation. The efficiency gains in iron and steel made those industries hyper-dependent on the outside world, too.
Okay.
If you cut off trade, the simulation shows the steel industry violently contracts.
Because no one is buying the steel overseas. But it's worse than that, right?
Much worse. Think about what steel is used for domestically. It's used to build the railways that take goods to the ports. It's used to build the massive cargo ships that conduct the trade.
Oh, I see.
If trade stops, the domestic demand for steel ships and rail lines instantly vanishes. It's a domino collapse.
And if steel collapses, who buys the coal?
Exactly. The coal industry instantly backfires. The giant furnaces go cold. The entire engine room of the Industrial Revolution grinds to a halt.
Wow.
You don't just lose your export revenue.
Yeah.
You bankrupt the vast domestic mines that power your own country. Everything is wired together in a massive, fragile web.
And this brings us right back to my very first question. The naval wars. The blood and the treasure. The Spanish Armada, the French blockades, the utter ruthlessness of British foreign policy.
The Royal Navy's true purpose becomes crystal clear when you look at this data. By the 1850s, maintaining open international trade was not a game for extra gold coins in the royal treasury. It was not about prestige.
It was the absolute baseline for biological survival.
Yes. The Royal Navy was not just a military tool. It was the life support system for the entire British population. If the sea lanes closed, the ghost acres vanished. The dumping grounds vanished. The factories died. Britain starved.
Let's pull all these threads together because the ultimate irony of this massive simulation is profound. We started by asking if trade created the Industrial Revolution.
And the truth is much stranger, much darker, and much more dangerous.
Uneven technological miracles and explosive, unstoppable population growth backed Britain into a corner. They didn't sit in a room and joyfully choose to be a global trading monster.
No, they were forced into it.
They had to expand outward, financially and territorially, just to avoid starving to death.
They built an incredible machine, a wealth-generating engine unlike anything the world had ever seen in human history. But the core law of this system is brutal. The price of massive, rapid economic ascension is total, irreversible dependence on the global system.
Once you build the machine, you can never, ever unplug it.
You are forever tied to the ghost acres. You are forever reliant on the dumping grounds. Your fate is bound to the invisible threads stretching across the oceans to India, to Egypt, to the Americas.
Which turns the mirror right back onto us. Look at the modern world right now. In the 19th century, Britain escaped the doomsday trap by forcing itself completely radically open to the world. They bet their entire national existence on the global network.
And today, we see the exact opposite rhetoric. Great powers are aggressively talking about decoupling. They're talking about building walls, deglobalizing, securing domestic supply chains at all costs. We are trying to run the simulation in reverse.
Are we convincing ourselves that we can just sever these invisible threads? That we can somehow walk away unharmed from the intricate, globally wired machine we spent centuries building? Or are we, just like 1850s Britain, secretly standing right on the edge of the cliff, entirely unaware of how far the drop really is? Keep that in mind next time you hear someone say we don't need the rest of the world.